Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're taking calls about this shooting in Florida and what is being said about it immediately. We have Democrat Senator Blumenthal saying excuses for failing to move forward on gun control make Congress complicit in these deaths. So you accept his solution, quote unquote, even if it's going to make things worse, or you are complicit in this. Well, I would ask Blumenthal if he thinks Big Pharma is complicit in any of this. Are they complicit in the murder-suicide pills that they sell? Are they complicit in the opioid crisis? If Blumenthal doesn't have anything to say about that, perhaps he's complicit as well. And then we have Marco Rubio saying, well, you should know the facts about this before you start claiming that a law could have prevented it. He's absolutely right. And we're going to have a clip from Don Lemon in just a moment, but we got some people who've been holding to comment on this. Let's go to Josh in Oregon. Thank you for holding, Josh.
Hi, thank you, David. Thanks for taking my call. So we know that Devin Kelly, the Texas church killer, he actually escaped a mental health facility, and there was domestic assault that was not registered by the Air Force, not given to the FBI, and that would have actually probably prevented him from being able to get the weapon that he murdered people with. We find out now that the military actually quietly, after this that happened, they added 4,000 people, veterans, to their to the gun ban list.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
The question: how many more people are flying under the radar like that?
That's right. We look at a situation like this, as you correctly pointed out. This was the government. He was doing these things as he was working for the government, his employer, and they failed to report this. I mean, this is a guy that they should have locked up instead of just letting him go loose, and they didn't tell anybody about what he had done. So he was allowed to legally buy stuff. So when we look at this, it's just like what Marco Rubio just said. Maybe we need to know a little bit more about this before we start coming out with laws to say how we're going to fix this, because we can look at background checks, but if you don't put the information in when you know these people have been violent and committing crimes and threatening, he was in a mental institution. He had threatened people on the base with violence, and he had a long history, as you point out, of abuse against his family and other issues, all these things, if we would have put the information in. So even when we have those types of controls, even when we have metal detectors at schools, you're still going to have these types of issues. And as I pointed out earlier in the program, this is, in terms of an armed society, this is nothing at all like what we've had throughout most of America's history. We had a far greater percentage of people who had firearms, and if you want to talk about the Wild West, well, there was a few people in the Wild West and it was highly publicized, but it was not typical. It was, for the most part, far, far, far safer than it is today. And we used to have a situation where you could go on an airplane back in the 60s. If you're going on a hunting trip, you could take your rifle with you onto the airplane, and you could just put it in the coat closet that they had there. Why didn't we have that kind of stuff? There's other issues that are involved here that they don't want to address, and we cannot allow them to destroy the Second Amendment. There's so few constitutional protections that we have left of our liberties of the Bill of Rights, and we're not going to surrender any more of the Second Amendment. We've surrendered a great deal of it, letting them turn it into a privilege. We're not going to do any more of that. We're going to take some of that back. Other comments, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know Senator Chris Murphy came out and called what's happening in America unparalleled. But I would like to refer him to the Washington Post, of all places, which wrote an article that was talking about how the government statistics in Mexico showed that 1,180 children under the age of 17 were killed in 2009, and half of them were killed from gun violence. And this is a country that has quite strict gun laws. And also, we know that 20% of the national rise in homicides from 2015 to 2016 came from Chicago. The national rise, 20% of it came from Chicago.
Yes. Yeah, we're talking about that earlier. The very place where they have some of the strictest gun control laws. And what are they doing? They're shooting, they're having assassinations of police officers on nearly a daily basis in Chicago. And when you look at where the gun violence is concentrated, it typically aligns with the places that have the most gun control. For example, schools, right? They're gun-free zones. And so we don't allow good people with guns to carry them, teachers, in schools. And so they become a victim killing zone, don't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at mass shootings; they almost always happen in gun-free zones, and when you look at the actual mass shootings, they account for something like less than 1% of the actual gun homicides that occur in the United States. The vast majority of gun homicides that occur, or gun related deaths rather, that occur in the United States are suicides by far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's again, it comes back to the people as well. One of the comments I had in, and I was looking for the article, I can't find it here on my desk, but there was a guy who's the coach of the Golden State Warriors. It looked like it was a picture of him standing like in a basketball. Is that a basketball team, guys? I don't follow sports. Okay, and is that a professional or a college? What's that? NBA. Okay, so he's a professional basketball coach, and he was out there saying, Trump's wall, we can't have that. But they just found massive caches of weapons, AK-47s, shoulder-fired rockets, and all this right at the border. And we've got these drug cartels. We've got a war that's going on. And again, it's a drug war, and it's the UN's drug war, but we have pushed that drug war. That has caused more deaths. It's more violent than what's going on even in Afghanistan. That's right there on our border. That's why I've said the president shouldn't wait to get any authorization for a wall from Congress. You ought to stick it in the NDAA. That's where they stick things like indefinite detention without trial by the military. So stick a border wall in there, because if you're not going to defend the border, what do we have a Defense Department for? Go back to calling it the War Department, which is what they used to call it. That's a bit more honest, because all they want to do now is have wars. They don't want to defend the United States. They could bring troops home, stand them at the border till we get the wall built, pay for the wall out of the defense budget. That's really what they ought to do. But we've got a real war going on in Mexico. 30,000 people killed in last year or so. And that's probably not the real number that's killed. It's probably a small number of the actual deaths that reported there. But we've got a real thing. And so he's criticizing President Trump. He goes, stop your phony wall. That's not going to protect anybody. You got to have gun control. It's like, wow. So I may not know anything about basketball or the Golden State Warriors, but I know this guy knows nothing about what's going on in the real world. Any other comments you want to make, Josh? I've got other people on the line I wanted to get to.
Yeah, one last comment. So it's funny how the Democrats always talk about common sense gun control, and these are the people who have no common sense when it comes to guns. And you don't have to look any further than the USA Today piece that was put out after the Vegas shooting, where they actually talked about chainsaw bayonet as being a possibility. I mean, just absurd.
I remember that. That became a social media meme. The chainsaw bayonet that you could put on an AK-4 or on an AR-15. Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect point. Thank you for holding, Josh.